Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulina. Welcome to our Islamic Finance podcast, our first episode. So in our first season, we are going to talk a little bit about general view of Islamic economy and finance. So it will be introduction to Islamic finance type of course, but it will talk about some economic issue and finance issues that you would normally expect to learn in these courses that deal with things of that nature. So my name is Almi Cholan. I'll be your host. I'm also joined in this podcast with my daughter, Maryam. She graduated a commerce degree, and we did a course before on YouTube, Islamic Finance Clinic, where we talked about certain challenges that face Islamic finance industry. Assalamu alaikum, Maryam. How are you? Are you ready for this?
Yes.
We have our tea and coffee. I'm drinking coffee, she's drinking tea and some water. So join us. We can have a simultaneous sip as we start. Bismillah. That's beautiful. Coffee and tea, they make all of these podcasts work much better for the listeners and for us as well. So this podcast, we want to examine some of the ideas that are impacting our economy and finance. And one of the first things whenever you think about these topics is that where do these principles come from? Like when you think about, people talk about money, economy, these days there is a lot of discussion. What sort of economic system should we have? There is a lot of criticism of capitalism that doesn't work, or there is inequality, there is greediness, there is all of these systemic problems. And then people might propose, let's do something that is radically different, like go towards socialism or whatever other derivative of this system. And then you might find people, especially Muslims, asking themselves, so what does Islam have to say about any of these ideologies or economic systems? Muslim might read something in Islamic book where, for instance, Prophet ﷺ prohibited market manipulation in terms of fixing the prices, and he left basically that people negotiate the prices between themselves. So if somebody is reading that and he reads Adam Smith, he will say, we see Islam is very much free market economy and capitalism and all of that. And they will find many of these, whether it's Ibn Khaldun Muqaddimah references and other verses, freedom to contract, freedom to engage. So they'll find a lot of evidences to say and suggest Islam is very much like a capitalism. On the other hand, somebody might read some other verses and they say, okay, but look on the other side, zakat, for example, which is the tax, type of a tax, not really tax, but what they translated as a poor due or a charity or something like that, which is taken from the wealth of the rich. It's not like an income tax. It's more like on your wealth that is, let's say, not active. The difference here is that zakat is someone's right in your money. So it's, let's say, 2.5% on the cash and cash equivalent. Then people will say, look, Islam is very much towards socialism, because it taxes the rich, takes from the rich and gives to the poor people. And then you also see some other instruments like sadaqah and general spirit of generosity and giving. And then the people make up argument that Islam is very nice because it treats people nicely, because people associate taking from somebody money and giving it to others as being nice. So this sort of simplistic way of thinking about the problems leads people to discount overall objectives of socialism or capitalism, and they really treat Islam very unfairly in this discussion. So Islam as an ideology, as a system, as a set of belief, way of living life, comes with its own objectives, aims. Like Sharia itself has its own aims, and they differ what it wants to see in terms of economy and how this wealth is being created or distributed. It comes down to specific rules that govern this system and what it's trying to achieve, which is completely different from any other system. And more you study these other systems, you see that the way they operate or think is very much driven what is at the root of the beliefs of the people who build this system or who design or who navigate. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, you do. You come across people who have the belief of, socialism, and you come across a lot of people who study economics who are more favoring towards capitalism.
Yeah. What you see is that whenever we analyze why we hold certain beliefs, what are the causes and effects of implementing any economic system, usually people are not trained or they are not thinking deeply, especially in this upside down world. So what does Islam in general stands for? We said that Islamic Sharia wants to protect integrity of economic system. One of the aims or maqasid of Sharia is protection of wealth. So on the individual level, you talk about certain, let's say, transactions, the way you enter into the contract, the way you acquire wealth, that you cannot cheat, that you have to freely engage in transaction. At the same time, when it comes to system, to the state, Islam does prescribe how we protect that economy and financial system and preserve its integrity. So cornerstone of this is built on the trust and putting things in order and removing any sort of injustice. So three particular concepts that probably are important to introduce. And you can find more about this in AAOIFI's Code of Ethics for Islamic finance professionals. For a couple of years, we had a group at AAOIFI. I was very fortunate to be a part of that working group that worked together on this Code of Ethics for Islamic finance professionals. And some of the core elements in this that were identified, there are many, many more, but like number one is adl, or in Turkish as they say adalet. And anybody watching Ertuğrul, they know adalet and hurriyet. These are concepts every Ertuğrul fan knows. Adalet, justice, which is very, very interesting when you look at the word. It basically means to put something in its rightful place, where it belongs, where it should be, in the right spot. So what would be then the opposite?
Take something out of its rightful spot.
Yeah, so this is what we call second concept. It's zulum, or sometimes in Bosnian, I think in other call it zulum. So zulum or zulum is absence of that adalet. It's oppression, that's right. So that's why even if you look at the disbelief, kufr, it is a part of injustice. And because you are doing injustice to yourself, because you are misplacing something which is your part of your ibadah and worship, part of how you understand your relationship when it comes to God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So denying that, meaning taking something that a right of Allah to be worshipped and so on, you're misplacing that. And then you have a concept of amana. So amana is trust, honoring and fulfilling duties, powers, responsibility associated with one's role, rank, position, and any status that is entrusted. When I study these many rules that Islam has in terms of economy and finance, I gain over the time a lot of confidence that Islam has very sophisticated and deep principles and rules that can deal with every situation that we have today. And I don't see that in any other religion or a system.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if we go now and we think about what other followers of any other religion in this number would consider their rules, what is prohibited, what is halal, what is when they are choosing anything.
Yeah.
You know,
there isn't any that even explore the concept.
Exactly. Of course, you have some religions like kosher food, let's say. Judaism, you have certain maybe dress code, and so there are some things. Maybe if somebody is vegan, they might not eat certain things, or if somebody is, I don't know what the ideology is, environmentalist or something, they might have how they invest money and don't invest in fossil fuel or something else. But the comprehensive lifestyle from the morning to the evening,
like a holistic approach.
Exactly. And that's, I guess, this is why I wanted to have these kind of podcasts, maybe a bit more long-term format other than usual YouTube videos, so that I can share some of the observation We can maybe tackle some of the questions and see some of the questions, what Islam has to offer in today's discussion. All right, so if I look at, for instance, just the normal definitions of economy, you see the Oxford, for example, Learner's Dictionary says it's a relationship between production, trade, and supply of money in the particular country or region.
Yeah.
When it comes to the production and trade, we have a statement that the Prophet ﷺ was asked what form of a gain is the best. And he ﷺ said, a man's work with his hands and every legitimate sale. Usually in the past, people would talk about what does that mean, somebody work with their own hands and every legitimate sale. Scholars would discuss whether this is manufacturing or agriculture, what has higher status. Usually discussion revolves around whatever benefits people the most. And what we see in all of these things is that it is something at the end that is tangible that people use. So today that could be anything else. Now, when it comes to the producing something and then selling that, that's how you put these things into economy. So you produce something that people hopefully will desire, want, and then you sell that in the market, and that's how people end up using it. Market is the place where ownership is passed. So this is cycle of entrepreneurship, business and trade. Then there is a third here bit, which is about supply of money. Now, when it comes to supply of money and how the money enter into this market, Islam here would fundamentally differ from any other system that is operating currently. Not that in Judaism and Christianity, they might have some issues around riba, but how many today Christians would you find that even know that Bible would have a verse that prohibits interest on food and on the money? These are very important two categories, food and money. Why particularly on these things? Because our rules on riba affect these categories, edible, staple foods, and the money. Usually people don't think about the depth of why Islam does not allow certain transactions with the, let's say, food. We know about money and we'll talk about money, but like food, especially these days when the small increase in price of food, which when you use it as the money is used, would affect people being able to buy food. Maybe some people, if you ask them, if the food jump 0.01%, maybe they cannot eat 3 times a day in that day rice, which is staple food or something like that. For us, maybe in Australia, we don't even know the price of rice. It doesn't bother us. But for many people, if you start mistreating food, there could be huge consequence in society. So Islam puts specific rules. You see, even just around the food, how to exchange different types of food. So we see that this supply of money and how the money enter into this production differs because Islam doesn't want to have then separate economy, financial economy, where this money works by itself and goes in circles and grows. And if you ask them, but hang on a minute, this now money giving birth and just growing in its own from itself, it's not any more natural. It's not connected with the economy. Where in Islam we would force the money to be connected. We wouldn't allow it to become a commodity that is sold. When it comes to the economics, we could say that is the study of the use of these resources, scarce resources, limited resources that have alternative use. The way we make these choices, it's what really economics is all about. When it comes to finance, it does a little bit differ from economics because finance is more specific subset, which is more associated with money and the transactions dealing with money, credit, banking, investment, money management, things of that nature, But in Islamic finance is not just purely like you see financial intermediation. It has to be connected with something real. And we'll talk much more about it in our next episodes. So when you think about how we said about economy, choices, scarcity, there is this idea that when you have a scarcity, it is something that brings uncertainty. Is there something you think today people are most or very uncertain about? Is there something that you notice, let's say in your generation or other people?
I think that there is a concern for like jobs and the future and stuff, but I think the biggest concern is politically where we're going and how that's going to impact our jobs and our futures.
these kind of factors in society, whether economic or political, obviously they all intersect in the bigger picture. And you're right. This is a struggle that goes back to the beginning of the human existence. In fact, when Allah created the first man and woman, the devil, Iblis, approached these newly created beings with the following propositions. And if you read in Quran, it says, your Lord did not forbid you these three, except that you become angels or become of the immortal. And so you see, devil approach our grandparents with this idea, promise, that is more like an insurance policy, peace of mind. When he said to them, your Lord did not forbid you these three, except that you become angels or become of the immortals. So he's telling them that there is something that if you consume, you will live like angels, immortal and free from these limitations that you have now. He is obviously understanding their nature. He's playing with this idea of uncertainty in their mind. And then he swore to them, says, indeed, I am to you from the sincere advisors. So in this interplay between desire for certainty and certain fears that surround it, like we feel that today people have that uncertainty. The life itself is uncertain. It's a test. And Allah says that we will surely test you with something of fear and hunger and a loss of wealth and lives and fruits, but give glad tidings to the patient. The life carries certain tests, and we are tested. Fear, hunger, loss of wealth, lives, and fruit of what we sometimes from a business, from the profit, from our and things like that. And then in another verse it says that we will surely test you until we make evident those who strive amongst you, and the patient, and we will test your affairs. So we see that this life and the test conditions that are presented to us, Ibn Kathir talks about this and says that Allah tests us sometimes with bounty, meaning of having something, and sometimes with affliction of fear and hunger. So you see, these are two sets of conditions. So when you think about life, you either have something, you are like surplus, or you don't have something. So this shows that the decisions are tested under these two sets of conditions, and this bounty of having something or affliction of not having. Fear can equally impact everyone from these two categories, as we all face that uncertain future, because for somebody with surplus, they fear that they may lose what they have. And those who don't have it already, they fear that they might not find it. The scarcity is really reality. And one of the economists says what good definition of the scarcity is that what everybody wants adds up to more than that there is. So this is a reality. There has never been enough to satisfy everybody completely. That is the real constraint, the reality of this life, that there is not enough of everything for everybody to satisfy everything. And that's just not only in money. That could be in any resource, any blessings, anything. So there is the consequences of this is that to deal with this uncertainty, we've developed numerous areas of study to understand and reach objectives that we seek. So this conflict and test within this life arises when our hopes, dreams, and aspirations are met with ethical and other norms that stand on our way. So the human, when they have that desire for certainty and they reach for that, let's say, wealth or resources or any outcome, what they are confronted with is some sort of dilemma, ethical dilemma, moral dilemma. And when we say ethical, moral, all these dilemmas, for us as a Muslim, the Islam is the source of these ethics and these rules. So when we talk about Islamic economy and finance, what we are talking about, we are examining ideas that impact our economy and system on the basis of these values. I would just finish with the story of our upside down world. And that is the story of a kingdom long time ago. People used to live in that kingdom. There was a king. He had these ministers. One day, one of the ministers, he didn't listen to the king. So king decided to chop off his nose. This is just the story. So now this minister going around, he doesn't have a nose. Everybody's laughing at him. He comes to the king and he said, "My dear king, I can't do my job anymore. Whenever I go, these ministers are laughing at me. I can't do it anymore. Can't handle it." The king calls these ministers to his office and he said, "Why are you laughing at him?" And he ordered that everyone's nose be cut off from these ministers. So now ministers lose their noses. They go into the town. They start doing the business. People laugh at them. They come after a while to the king and say, "Oh, dear king, we can't do our job. Whenever we go to the town, people see us without nose and they start laughing at us." So then the king decides to cut nose of everybody in that kingdom. And as soon as the new baby is born, the nose is chopped off, and that goes for some time. The new king is now born. It become a tradition. The new king nose is cut off. So this goes for several generations. Become habit in the society, becomes the way, normal way. After some time, one young man from another kingdom comes into that kingdom on the way. He passed through the market, and then as he tried to buy something in the market, he looks around, something is strange. And he's looking like, what's wrong with these people? Where are their noses? Who did this? As he looks at them, other people look at him so strangely. They are astonished. And then suddenly they start laughing. They're laughing at him and making jokes. Look at this man. He has a nose. Why didn't his parents know that they should cut off his nose when the child is born? And they're laughing at him. He's looking at them, no noses. He's also laughing at them. So they laugh at each other. And so in this story, you see something that is normal becomes not normal anymore. And something that is not normal becomes normal. And that is what we said in the beginning, the difference between justice and injustice. So the justice is that you put things in its right place. And injustice is you put things in the wrong place. But society can sometimes accept the wrong thing as the right thing as well. Today, when we look at economy, business, how things are produced, how the business is going, who is in this business community, anything you look at, you see half of the things are fake. Even the food you eat, it's not real. You have 100 ingredients, you don't know what's in the food. So now we have everything upside down. And if we want to fix this, brings the justice, put everything in its place, that will require people, believers, people of integrity, to get up and engage in that economy. And unfortunately, we have been missing from the scene. We are not contributing. Most of what we consume as Muslims is not produced by us. The other day I was watching some news, and one of these big fashion brands, forgot what's Tommy Hilfiger, something like that, I think. There was a big news, they made a new hijab. And they said, this is going to be new hijab, a special material. And I was thinking, like, how special, what they need to design to make hijab so special, you know? Yeah. How difficult it is to make these things. Unfortunately, most of what is going as a part of halal economy is not produced by Muslims, unfortunately. And I think this is where the main problem is. I think it's great that a lot more people from everywhere participate in halal. But the main consumers of that halal are not participating as producers. So I think if we want to put our Islam in a way of life, then we need to be much more involved in production side of things. People don't need just another thing that we already have, another junk food, another fashion label that is totally not related to modesty, even the modesty label or something like that. No, we need something that will really show our way of life, that will embed certain values into these products. So I think it's a time for new generation of people and Islamic economy really to rise and create alternative thinking in terms of economy and also alternative products and services.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about how like we want to bring in like a new way of thinking and dealing with everything in the economic system, and just bringing in morals and ethics. But how would you bring that change? How would you bring about that change in thinking and that change in everything if you're the only one doing it? Do you know what I mean? Like, how can it be that, okay, let's say I want to engage in, the fashion industry. I want to engage in this market in an ethical, wholesome manner. And yes, now slow fashion is a thing, but how would you engage with it with proper Islamic principles when you're the only one doing it?
Obviously, starting something is a challenge. When you think about anything that we are using today, at one point in time started as very minor blip on the screen. You look at, I think 20 years ago when Alibaba started, that changed Chinese, let's say, e-commerce. It was a teacher who started a little project and then it became hundreds of $1 billion worth of e-commerce payment network and so on. If you look at the Facebook, guy started in his room, little website. Netflix, same thing, little concept that is now having hundreds of millions of users. So all of the ideas, they start small. To do it, there needs to be some persistence. There needs to be something that you're doing it for a reason. There is a commitment. So if we talk about, let's say, fashion, for example, first we need to start by thinking about where do we fit in the overall. For instance, let's say, since you brought that point on the fashion, most of the fashion now, even let's say all of the fashion now, what do you think they are trying to sell to us? What's their product? What's their thing? How they're selling it to us? What's their selling point?
I feel like it's a lifestyle.
And yeah, all right. So what sort of usually lifestyle? What's the common denominator in all of these lifestyle?
Well, for the most part, it's immoral sort of lifestyle.
Right. Yeah. So they are kind of following their desires. So they would show something in the dress that will awaken desires in people. And this is the lowest of the desires. So they would follow, they would either look at human beings in terms of these impulses and an emotion that they associated. Often the lifestyle, it wouldn't be necessarily moral. Especially with the new ideologies, it would cross between not moral lifestyle to unnatural lifestyle as well.
Yeah.
But when you think about then, what would be Islamic thing that is different in these brands? What would be Islamic? Is it just the length of the clothes, or
would be more normal, more natural, I think. More something that is like it's appealing, but it doesn't have that element of like awakening desires or like attachment, for example, to things or wanting more of something by having that dress.
So that means that rather than appealing to the lowest desires with the fashion, your fashion would be more appealing to dignify the human being. So the way that human is dressed would more be in a way that we highlight human aspect. So when you look at certain people, let's say in the West now, we live in, let's say Australia, and let's say Queen is coming. The way that she would be dressed by people, the way that she would carry herself, it's designed with more to show that dignity. Even in the terms of the manners, you wouldn't be able to just shake hands with the Queen, for example. It would be against the protocol. The Queen shake hands with somebody by offering, for example. The way that she's maybe walking, the way that she's eating, or when to speak. So all of this protocol, there is a certain wisdom and the logic, what it's trying to preserve. So there is a whole lifestyle of Islam that would be embedded in these clothes. So the clothes itself then would try to fit within that kind of a lifestyle where it honors the person and dignifies that person. And therefore, the design, the style, everything would be appropriate. And when you see that person, you can see that this is a decent person. You think this is honorable person. This is not a person of all of those other things. If you had that idea, for example, and the same could be said for any industry, then the path would be to sort of raise awareness, put a story out, find and connect with the people who are similar, who share that identity and idea. It's important to be brave, to take the risk, grow it slowly, step by step, and perfect and learn and understand and do all the things that make sense. That's basically how it goes. And look, some people that will be maybe small business, and there will be some people that Allah bless, that they make a huge business of that, huge brand that we can be proud of. But unless you try, unless you do, you don't know where you are. Some people, maybe they don't have an entrepreneurial, but they might be great at supporting those with that vision and skill set. I think you either lead, have a vision, have a confidence, believe in that, or you help somebody who is leading. So you are part of that, making the difference. Much of it is in the belief, because even these other people, with their confidence, how they sell it, they convince these gullible people. This is the fashion. I don't want to even mention some of these ideas that we see. Terrible. Nothing to do with fashion. It's pure demonic way of thinking.
Sometimes you see, there's a particular brand that I know of. It started on the right path, but then as the years go on and they acquire that, that customer base, let's call it, then they start changing. And then they start changing to suit a different customer base. And they lose their initial customer base, but they gain a much bigger customer base. And then again, they're like, okay, we're making more profit, but they're selling their values. So, how do you make sure that you stay within what you wanted to do initially, and you don't, sell your values? Because you're the little guy in this case. You're the little guy. How do you not sell your values when you come to that competitive market and you don't have the ability exactly, and you don't have the force of the market behind you?
When it comes to the brand or business starting from one place and then changing, this comes to the beginning of our discussion, that people are tested under two different set of conditions, if you remember, by either having something and then they fear that they will lose it, or by not having something. So these are two different tests. So somebody who is starting, they might put their trust in Allah and they say, Allah, I want to do this and that. And then they are hopeful and then they succeed. So they pass that test. But then when they succeed, just like our grandparents in paradise, you see, there's no scarcity in paradise. How little scarcity did our grandparents face in paradise? Adam and his wife. How much? When Iblis said to them, if you don't do this, if you don't eat this, that's it. You will not be like angels. So they have everything. They succeeded. They have everything except that one, that little thing. So now you have something you fear of losing. So this is the human weakness. So person builds the business and then Shaitan comes to him and said, well, if you don't do this, change your brand to something.
To have more people, more money.
You will not be accepted.
Yeah.
Maybe you will lose not just money, maybe status now. Now you are status. You need to show these different people that you are something. So the Shaitan comes from that angle that you will lose something. That doesn't always necessarily mean the money, although it could mean money. It could be that you will lose standing in society. So these are the two forces that impact human being, wealth and status. And so while the person was successfully passing, not having something, patient with not having, being grateful, being appreciative and trusting Allah when they have something is a different story. And that's something that we see, not just in this area. I remember one of the scholar in Serbia, part of Serbia, Sanjak, where Muslims live, Mufti Zukorlic. He was giving a story that when people would give zakat, and in that region, Muslims forgot their religion after the Second World War and communism came. And so he went to study, came back just around the war time in Balkan, about 90s. He became mufti, and he started to resurrect the idea of paying zakat. He tell a story of the rich businessman bringing first time zakat, and he is struggling with himself to put that money. You can imagine, his heart doesn't want to let go of that money, but he eventually found a way to put that money. Next year, he was still having a difficulty to give zakat, but he eventually put it down. The third year, he mastered that in himself, that fear. And he came with the money, and without any difficulty, he put the zakat. He gave that charity. And you see that somebody struggling and then overcoming that, which is a different from another person who, when he didn't have much money, let's say he's got $5,000. And then people say to him, give zakat from that. He says, what am I going to give zakat? I have only little money. It's easy for those rich people to give money because they have a lot of it. But for me to give this much, it's a lot. So when he became rich, people come to him and say, now you have a lot of money. Give zakat, million, you become millionaire. He says, what are you talking about? I'm rich. You know how big my zakat is? It's easy for the little guy. His zakat is little bit. He can easily give it. But for me, 2.5% is a lot of money. I'm rich now. So you see, the point is that he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it, but you sometimes cannot see it immediately. But this is also connected with intention of the person. So when we build these kind of businesses or anything, we need to start with the right intention. That we are the Muslims, we have a lifestyle that we want to protect and preserve. Whether it's a fashion, education, psychology, technology, banking, investment, anything you can think of. Our intention must be to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to do something that is halal, to find the barakah in money. That is the concept that is lost. To feed ourselves from that, to help society in a wholesome way. If we do that, then inshallah, Allah will bless our business and support us. And we should always check ourselves, be in the company of the right people. Sometimes even as these people progress on the higher level, they surround themselves with the people who eventually take them to the area that this become inevitable. So we should always surround ourselves with the right people, do the right thing, connect with the community, balance life. And we hope Allah, inshallah, protects us, because at the end of the day, this is where the real guidance is. If we are left to our own selves, there is no hope for us then. So that's it for today. Thank you all for listening. If you look in the show notes, you'll find the link for our website, IslamicFinancePodcast.com, with all of the social media links, which are all new from YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Follow us, share this information with those who you think might benefit. Join also our email list on the website. And inshallah, we'll see you next week for the new episode. Thank you very much from both of us. Assalamu alaikum.